We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want to support the channel through a super chat donation, hit the $sign, put a comment in, and we'll get to it as soon as possible. Welcome in to the corner, the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, PATC community, of being a legend with your comments in the chat or with your phone calls later in the show. The Great Split is a looming reality, and that shouldn't come as a surprise to you if you've been watching this channel since the very first episode. Episode number 1, our manifesto. Revenue sharing was always the straw that was steering the realignment drink. That's always been the reality. It's why Texas and Oklahoma called the SEC. It's why USC called the Big Ten. It's why Oregon and Washington, they joined the Big Ten even though they're going to get a cut. They were not going to get as much money as the other Big Ten schools, but they're joining as fast as possible. It's why the Holy Smokes Theater, it's why the popcorn line is as long, it's going out the door in the Holy Smokes Theater. It's why Florida State and Clemson in North Carolina, That's why they're going through all this. The machinations, hiring consultants, hiring lawyers, spending millions of dollars even before they take the great leap. They're possibly threatening to take the great leap because of the great split. But what does the great split actually mean? The great split, we're going to go through it on our Ross Dellinger article, Yahoo Sports, but I want to get into more than what just the article is saying. Yes, we at Peek Around the Corner, we've always believed the great split was happening, but in terms of governance, in terms of making your own rules, in terms of all of that, it doesn't necessarily mean, not at this point, that there's going to be playoff access cut from, for example, the G5 schools. It might years down the road. I don't think it's happening. It's not happening in 24, not happening in 25. I got a feeling it's not happening in 26, 27, 28. We shall see. But the great split of where the conferences and the schools sharing their revenue to the student athletes, those days are coming. We've been talking about it since day one of this YouTube channel. It's what I talked about on April 3rd, 4th, 5th in 2022 when I was putting out information that USC was calling the Big Ten. It was going to happen. I put the words revenue sharing. Years down the road, this is what USC anticipated. This is what in 2019 and before, but 2019, this is what Texas and Oklahoma anticipated. Everybody's looking for the best deal on revenue because they know that the revenues are going to be shared with the student athletes. How you compensate the student athletes is going to be due in large part with how, let's just be frank, with how much money your conference and schools bring in. Conferences are getting into the act. We talked about it since episode 1. Even the Supreme Court, even the courts are showing the pathway towards that. Conferences are becoming more powerful. They're going to be putting up guardrails. But what I'm going to get into, what Yahoo Sports did not get into, what other articles other people aren't quite there yet, is the student athletes are going to get compensated, revenue sharing. But in return, there's going to be obligations that the student athletes are going to have to adhere to. Just like a professional athlete, just like in the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, MLB, MLS, you name it. Contract, there's going to be a return obligation when the student athletes get representation, when the conferences and schools make the deal for revenue sharing. Conferences and schools are going to have, they're not just going to give out revenue sharing. They're going to want something back in return. We're going to talk about that as well. The great split is looming. We've been talking about it. No, there's not a super league forming where there's just one league. No, there isn't a P2, in other words, only two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, run and hide from everybody else. They create their own universe, their own galaxy. If that happens, it ain't going to happen for years. It's not happening. So again, everybody who's been talking about that on Twitter, message boards, was never close to reality. The great split, though, is a looming reality where the autonomy conferences They're going to have to pay out the wazoo when it comes to these lawsuits. The NCAA is going to be paying out the wazoo. These conferences, they're going to want to be able to go and form their own rules, their own regulations, their own enforcement of those rules and regulations. It's happening. So 5, 6, 7 years down the line, if an Eastern Michigan cannot afford the communications and the helmet, if there are other issues that other schools can't afford, maybe they won't be able to compete at the highest level. Power 5, the Autonomy Conferences, Autonomy 4 Conference, they want more and more power control of their sport. And the student athletes are going to benefit. The student athletes are going to benefit. They're going to get higher compensation. But in return, they're going to have to give something back. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And then we're going to lead with the great split looming. We're going to lead the show with that. We're going to talk about the rival games coming up this week. We did an episode 333. If you missed it, go to it. Episode 33 after the live show. But we're gonna break down the top 9 rival games that have the most impact for the college football playoff selection committee. There's a lot of them, right? Auburn, Alabama, impactful with Alabama. Georgia Tech, impactful with Georgia. Arizona can still get to the Pac-12 championship game if Oregon loses to Oregon State. It's on. If Arizona wins, on and on and on. We're going to be talking about rivalry week. It's happening this weekend. Of course, Michigan and Ohio State. Come on. That's the most impactful game of them all. But there's a lot of them. There is a lot of them out there. So we're going to go through the rival games. Northwestern Stadium, Northwestern Wildcats, $800 million. Redoing Ryan Field, the whole thing. Where Northwestern's going to play football while that stadium is being torn down and built back up, I don't know. But Northwestern football, $800 million. They have a beautiful practice facility that sits on the shores of Lake Michigan. And now they're going to build themselves a 35,000 feet state-of-the-art technology with football scoreboards, state-of-the-art. Northwestern's Evanston, Illinois. The Council of Evanston, Illinois gave them the final thumbs up after a 6-hour debate. It's happening. Northwestern football, the investment is there. And then we're going to be talking about the Wild Portal that's coming up December 4th. I think that's 12 days away. We're on a 12-day countdown. It's going to be wild. And you can tie that back to the fact that these autonomy conferences, these schools, they're going to want something in return for the student athletes with this compensation. And that is a little bit more control, a little bit more structure over roster management. The coaches, the universities, athletic departments, okay, we're going to give you more compensation a few years down the road, but in return, man, you got to be signing some contracts here. Roster management is out of control. These coaches don't have any time off. We'll get into that as well. I want to thank everybody for coming on in. First of all, Ricky Tungate, I appreciate your membership. Thank you so very much. Rick Tungate just got themselves an early peak membership. If you don't know what that is, we started that on Saturday. We started that on Sunday. It's Tuesday, and it is going full. It is going like crazy. I appreciate all you guys' support. What we're doing, we're not taking anything away. Our content is our content. We're adding content to college football's Peek Around the Corner. We're providing a membership only early peak episodes. Early peak episodes. We're gonna talk about things we don't normally talk about here at College Football YouTube. Peek Around the Corner with our live shows, with our episodes, with our watch parties. We're going to be talking about recruiting. We're going to be talking stadium renovations. We talked about the Northwestern football renovation in our early peak video today. We're also going to be dropping a little bit of nugget of information when it comes to realignment in the world of college football. We've already done that this morning and 2 days ago. Early peak. Early peak membership, $5.99 a month, and I think we're going to get to the point where people can buy each other memberships. I know that's the way how to do it in YouTube, because there's some people, they can't afford. They want it, they can't afford the $5.99 a month. So we're going to have it to where people can buy memberships for other people. I appreciate the support so far. People like it. It's a little bit of a different vibe. We go right into the story. We get right out of the story. It's an early peak. Things we're going to be talking about later in the live show, later in the day or later in the week. And we're also going to be talking about things we just can't get to here on our live shows. We're adding content. We're not taking anything away. And of course, you know how it works. In the chat room, our live shows are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We thank you so very much. Super Chat supersedes all other comments. If you donate to our channel, we'll get to your super chat right away. Then the membership comments and the non-membership comments. Thank you so very much for all your support. I need to thank the people who've come on in today. Early. Jay Perlmutter. Live show. First in, Mr. Bruin. Chip Miller. Chip Kelly. Still the head coach of the UCLA Bruins. It's Tuesday. He's going to make it through the year. Is he going to make it to next year? The first year in the Big Ten. Is Chip Kelly going to be the UCLA Bruins head coach as UCLA starts in the Big Ten next year? Anthony Palika's in the house. Unfortunate split, I feel. Matt Neeson, thanks for coming on in. J. Rod, West Virginia guy. I hope my Mountaineers stay in the Big 12. I don't see why they won't. At this point in time. At least for now. Christopher Shannon says college football is dead. Ryan Brooks is in the house. Randy Taylor, Cornelius Green, David Keitzer, Immaculate is in the house. Becky, go Huskies. Awesome. Clips. What's the big news I missed? We're going to be going through it. Mr. Louisville Cardinal, awesome. Lawson Clips is in the house. He's got to be pretty excited. David Kreitzer, Northwestern has the bag of money. Yes, they do. Christopher Shannon, Gophers keeping the axe or Fickle claiming silverware year one. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Gophers to win. It's not looking good. Gophers are limping towards the finish line. They limped at the start of the race. They fell down in the middle of the race. And they're just trying to get to the end of the race. Jonathan Price is in the house. Rick Olson, Cougs beat Huskies. That's another impactful rivalry game in the college football playoffs. We're going to talk about that as well. Thanks for all coming in. Let's get to the story. We'll get to the phone calls later in the show. This, again, we've been talking about this since episode 1 of this YouTube channel. Revenue sharing is stirring the drink on all these changes. It's going to happen. And schools believe this was going to happen years ago. Again, this is why Oklahoma and Texas called the SEC, USC called the Big Ten, Washington and Oregon did all they could to get to the Big Ten. It's why Florida State and Clemson are doing all they can to get out of the ACC. Revenue share is coming to the student athletes. The more revenue you have, well, you know how the game is played, right? So let's take a look. Ross Dellinger's article this morning. Again, we covered it a little bit on Early Peak episode for members only. Go check that out. Get an Early Peak membership, and you can watch the Early Peak episodes. In college athletics, headed for the great split. Is college athletics headed for the great split? We need to recreate or relaunch the NCAA. Last Friday, a day before his university, now we're not going to go through the whole article. Last Friday, there's a link provided in the description. You can read the whole thing. Last Friday, a day before his university hosted Michigan in a Big Ten football game in College Park, Maryland's athletic director, Damon Evans, sat before a group of college athletic stakeholders inside a conference room at the Marriott Marquis, given a direct, at times blunt, and sometimes jarring assessment of college sports and its future. A sitting Big Ten athletic director vocalized publicly what's been privately whispered for months. It's been whispered for years, but anyways, within 5 years, and most say much sooner, the Power 5 conference schools will operate from under a new governance structure that features an athlete revenue sharing model, a shift often described by many within the industry as the Great Split. I do believe in 5 years from now that we will be at a point where we are sharing revenue with student athletes. Evans told leaders of the Knight Commission, a group mostly of former, current college athletic administrators promoting basically reforms in all of college sports, to think we are not going to be sharing some of those revenues. We are going to be there. It would not surprise me to see some sort of different type of governance structure in place that separates the Autonomy 5 or Autonomy 4 out from the current structure. The Great Split is no longer a far-fetched idea or a long-shot theory. It is instead a looming reality. And that's why we called our show today, Great Split, Looming Reality. In light of legal challenges facing college athletics, most notably the costly House antitrust case against the NCAA and the power conferences. The case, seeking as much as $3 billion in retroactive name, image, and likeness and broadcasting revenue payments, is the latest lawsuit expected to chip away at the NCAA's bedrock of amateurism. The case will undoubtedly force the organization to distribute more revenue to athletes like those legal losses before it. Think cost of attendance payments in 2015 and All-State academic-related stipends in 2021. This is the next phase of it. However, the House case is much more significant as it opens the door for direct pay to athletes by seeking the elimination of the NCAA NIL rules. One SEC president describes its outcome as financially catastrophic. There is talk of FBS schools, each chipping in upwards of $5 to $10 million in potential settlement payments. Each FBS school. There's 100 and what is there now? Well, back when all this was happening, let's just take a round figure of 130. There's like 133 now, but let's just take 130. Each chipping in $5 to $10 million. $5 to $10 million is a whole lot of money for a whole lot of G5 schools. That's a lot of money. That's more money than they make in media revenue for the year. Insiders say the case will require the industry to reshape itself. In fact, according to former Duke and Notre Dame athletic director Kevin White, such conversations are transpiring at the highest level of the industry. They call it an industry. We need to recreate or relaunch the NCAA. We have a good leader, Charlie Baker, who can do that. There is some modeling going on, said White, who remains active within college athletics as a leading member of a consulting group, the Huron Group. There are a number of models being created, he continues. Some I've been sworn to secrecy on. I sat in a room, listened to a model. There's no end to the models. The next iteration and what it might look like. After the meeting, White spoke more to Yahoo Sports about the models, some of which have the power conferences schools leave and take their resources with them. That is something he believes will negatively impact college athletics' broad-based Olympic sports system. For someone like me, that is devastating, he said. It's beyond devastating, it's nuclear. The Night Commission meeting, though absent, we'll skip that part. Pressures are mounting to directly pay at least those athletes competing in the revenue-producing sports of football and basketball at the major conference level. In many respects, the pressures are self-inflicted, decisions from college athletics leaders. They are starting to publicly own such mistakes. I'm indicting everyone, including myself, said White. We should have been far more progressive and forward-thinking over the past 20 years or more. We'll skip through that part. I used to be one of those athletic directors saying, we don't have the money to do that, Evans said. At the University of Maryland, it's challenging to make ends meet, but a student athlete might look at us and say, just reallocate the funds. I've come to grips with that. We've made decisions to spend money on certain things that have gotten us into trouble we are in today. In fact, said Evans, the Big Ten's newly $1 billion a year television contract only adds more fodder for athletes to say, where's ours? Where do we get our share from? Evans acknowledged to the group that the university donor collectives are using NIL rules, originally meant for commercial and endorsement opportunities, as a form pay for play that circumvents a traditional pay system, such as employment. We've gotten around it by going this route, he said. However, the farce is nearing an end. And if there is a PATC money shot in this article, however, the farce is nearing the end, that's it. In other words, the power of the NIL, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be there. But it is so out of control. You know, the universities, the schools, the conferences, especially the schools, I mean, when you are employed, when these student athletes are signed a contract with the school, there are guardrails set up for the school, for the athletic department, for the football program or basketball program. They can plan their roster out. It's going to help competition out. Yes, we want there to be more freedom, more compensation for the student athlete. But they're going to have to deliver something in return. Just like professional basketball players, just like football players. They get compensated. They sign their name to a contract. When these student athletes, when they get representation, and when this deal with this model, however it's created, whatever it looks like, at the end of the day, the student athletes are going to get educational benefits, health benefits, higher compensation. In return, the schools and the conferences are going to have more control over the rules, regulations. And NIL is not going to dictate everything like it is now. So that's about all I'm going to go through. The rest of it is just basically regurgitating the same thing over and over again. So that's the big article. That is the big news coming out for today. But if you've been with us here at Peek Around the Corner, you know that the revenue sharing piece has been something that we've been talking about since episode 1 of College Football's Peek Around the Corner. Episode number 1. When USC called the Big Ten, when we told that story on March 3rd, 31st, 2022, it was about USC knowing, believing that revenue sharing was going to happen, that the NIL collectives was going to be a big part. The donors did not want to pay for NIL and everything else with USC, but they believed that revenue sharing, higher compensation to the student athletes was going to happen. So USC wanted to get above the stratification line. And they did. Same reasoning, Texas and Oklahoma. Going to the SEC is not easier. It's not easier to win a SEC championship. Why did they do it? Because they wanted to make sure they got above the stratification line. It's the same thing why Washington and Oregon are willing to go to the Big Ten next 4 or 5 years, get paid not as much as the other Big Ten schools, but they are in because they wanted to make sure they're above the stratification line. The Big 12 did what they had to do. Brett Yormark did what he had to do to make sure they got a media contract so their schools would be in the room. So all those schools, none of them would be pushed out of the Autonomy Conference, the Autonomy world, because the great split is coming. They're not above the stratification line like we talked about with the Big Ten and the SEC, but they are in the room. They made sure of that. I believe that Jim Phillips, we talked about it yesterday, he's going to do everything he can to make sure every school in the ACC stays in the room, stays in an autonomy power conference. And he can do it. He can do it. He can make sure his conference doesn't implode like the Pac-12, but he might have to make a deal. He might have to acquiesce to a settlement. Because there's a couple schools, at least a couple schools in this conference, that wants to get above the stratification line. They believe they can get above the stratification line of the Big Ten and the SEC. So when we're talking about the great split looming, it's autonomy conferences splitting away from the G5 when it comes to their own governance. Maybe it's going to have to do with them taking away playoff access for the G5 schools. I don't think that's going to happen here in the next 4 or 5 years. I do not think so. We shall see. So that's what's going on. Revenue sharing, this thing of revenue sharing, conferences and schools sharing revenue to the student athletes is the straw that is stirring the drink. We said it on episode 1, August 10th of 2022. We've done 333 episodes. We've done a whole bunch of live shows. That is what is steering everything. And it's being said out in public. And it is going to happen. And in return, the conferences and universities are going to protect themselves from any more long-term lawsuits over NIL, over compensation. They're going to get some security. They're going to get some structure. They're going to get some ability to plan the future. The schools themselves are going to be able to at least somehow, some way manage the roster. Look, Mike Elko. This was yesterday. We're probably about 13 days away from complete anarchy and the Wild West. It's literally open free agency for all of college football. Now, it's true. And we're going to be covering it here at Peek Around the Corner. We're going to be covering it. December 4th is going to be a wild day. December 5th is going to be a wild day. December 6th is going to be a wild day. A lot of student athletes are one-time transfer where they can transfer to another school without being a grad transfer. A lot of big-time players are going to take the opportunity. They want to get into the transfer portal, free market, right? NIL opportunities, right? Inducement. People using NIL as an inducement. Well, all that sounds great to the student athlete. But college football can't be run this way anymore. It just is not, it can't be done. So when the student athlete's overall compensation goes up higher through revenue sharing, there's also going to be obligations that the student athletes are going to have to the school and even to the conference. So it's going to be give and take. Student athletes being represented by some union or by some organization. The conferences and the schools are going to have to meet in the middle. And that's what's going to be best for our sport, the sport we love. And again, there's going to be advantages now. When you're a university making more money, you're going to be able to use your revenue to pay more direct revenue to student athletes. Just like the NFL has a salary cap, but just like Major League Baseball, Yankees and the Kansas City Royals. Some of the schools are going to be Yankees. Some of the schools are going to be the Kansas City Royals. But if you're a Kansas City Royal and you got yourself a player and you're compensating him, he's contracted to the Royals. The Yankees just can't call him up and take him. That's what's going to happen here in college football. If you're the Syracuse Orange and you've got yourself a great tailback, true freshman, and you got him on a 3-year contract because he agreed to it, the Miami, Florida Hurricanes aren't going to be able to just come up to him and tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, come to Miami. Just like the professional leagues. Now, there won't be a draft, right? It's not going to be just like the professional leagues. But you guys understand what I'm saying. This is the future of college football. This is the future of college basketball. Okay, let me get to a few comments here before we got a bunch of things to go over. Still in our monologue. I'm going to try to get through it as quick as I can. It's a huge, massive story. Gophers are part of the largest audience in Big Ten network football history. Market text. So more people watch the Ohio State Minnesota Golden Gopher football game than in the history of the Big Ten network. And the Gophers had a The Gophers had nothing to do with it. 37-3. What it does tell you, first of all, it tells you the great power. We know this, the great power brand of the Ohio State Buckeyes. The other part it tells you is the Big Ten Network keeps breaking their own records. It's not just in football. It's in women's volleyball. It's in basketball. It's in hockey. The Big Ten Network, what is crazy about it is the Big Ten Network has lost some subscribers, just like all these networks. But their ratings keep going upwards. So if you have the Big Ten Network, you're more likely to watch it now than ever before. And now the Big Ten Network is going to be a big part. It's going to be playing a big part in the state of Washington, University of Washington. In Oregon, University of Oregon. In Los Angeles, UCLA, USC. The Big Ten Network is actually still making money, even though the subscription base has gone down, because they're charging more for ad revenue because of the numbers keep slowly climbing up each and every year. It's kind of a fascinating thing to watch. Same thing is happening with the SEC. The ACC is doing better than what they expected. You know, it's kind of interesting. These conference networks, they're not going away. They're just not going away like a lot of people thought they were 5, 6, 7 years ago. Okay. Old Chinese proverb, Stephen McNeely, may you live in interesting times. Yes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. MBM, Big 12, we get 4 schools from the ACC and become the Big 20. The Big 20. Thank you, JD Turtle. Mr. Terrapin, thank you so much for being a member, a new member of the Early Peak. Thank you so much, JD Turtle. I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. If you're an Early Peak member, there's going to be Early Peak videos coming out a few times every week. Just dropped another one early this morning. Thank you so much, JD Turtle. I appreciate it. Terrapins played a pretty tough game last week. They did okay. They did a lot better than the Gophers. Maryland challenged Michigan. The Gophers, they punted twice. 4th and 5, early in the game at the Buckeyes 40 and the Buckeyes 42-yard line. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. At least Maryland came to play. I'm getting all fired up again. Okay, let's get to the other stories here. We got a lot to get through. I appreciate everybody coming on in. Let's get to the rivalry games of this weekend. The rivalry games that have such an impact on the College Football Playoff Committee, what they're going to be deciding for the 4-team invites. Ranking, this is from Heather Dinich, ESPN, ranking the 9 rivalry week matchups for playoff importance. We're not going to go through the whole article. But man, this has got my blood pumping here. This has got my blood pumping. This Saturday, now we're still planning on doing a watch party here at Peek Around the Corner for the game. Michigan, Ohio State. We're still planning on that. I think we're going to be able to do it. Michigan, if Ohio State wins, the Buckeyes win the East and will face Iowa in the conference championship game. An upset to the Hawkeyes would almost certainly knock the Big Ten out of the playoff. So Michigan, Ohio State, either one lose to Iowa, they're probably out. Don't think that's going to happen. All due respect to Immaculate and all the other hot guys in the chat. Okay? If Michigan wins, if they beat Ohio State, the Wolverines would capture the East Crown and match up with Iowa in the Big Ten game. It would also be the program's third straight victory against Ohio State and Ryan Day. The pressure that Ryan Day is under is immense. Now, while Ohio State finished in the top 4 last season without beating Michigan, it would be far more difficult this time around. With wins against Penn State and Notre Dame, the Buckeyes have a similar resume, but the difference is more Power 5 contenders. And I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, the Buckeyes are not, in my strongly held opinion, the Buckeyes are not going to make the playoffs if they lose to Michigan. There's too many other teams, unlike last year, that are in contention. You better be a conference champion to get into the 4-team invitational here in 2023. The Buckeyes need to beat Michigan, need to win the Big Ten championship to get into the playoffs. Florida State, Florida. Now, if Florida State wins, the undefeated Seminoles will still be in the hunt for a top 4 spot with quarterback Tate Rademacher under center. They lost Jordan Travis. But you know, if Florida State loses this game, backup quarterback, they're going to be out. And then Florida State and Louisville game, if Florida State wins that game, I think they're in. But if they lose, they're not going to be a one-loss participant in the college football playoffs. If Florida wins, the ACC playoff hopes will be dire at best. I agree. Florida State and Louisville, which play each other in the ACC championship game, would each have one bad loss. Now, Louisville, they're a live shot. They're a long shot, but they're a live shot. But Louisville lost to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's 3-8. It's going to be very difficult for Louisville to slide in. Florida State, obviously the ACC's best chance at a representative in the 2023, the last year of the 4-team invitational. What about Oregon State, Oregon? If Oregon State wins, if Oregon State, the Beavers beat the Ducks, Oregon would have 2 losses and they would fall out of the college football playoff race. If the Beavers win and Arizona beats Arizona State, the 3-loss Arizona Wildcats would play for the Pac-12 championship game. Unbelievable job by Jed Fish, the head coach of Arizona. Incredible job. So, Oregon, obviously they got to win this game and they got to beat Washington. Oregon is the highest ranked. Oregon, it will clinch a spot in the Pac-12 title game against Washington if they beat Oregon State. They are currently the committee's top one-loss team. So if Oregon defeats Oregon State and Washington, Oregon has got a really good shot at being in the playoffs. Other schools don't with one loss. Louisville, they're not going to be ahead of Oregon, I don't believe. I don't believe a one-loss Ohio State, a non-Big Ten champion Ohio State, is going to be ahead of Oregon. Oregon's going to be ahead of all of them, in my opinion. Washington State and Washington. If Washington State wins, this would be a devastating blow to the Huskies' playoff hopes, because the committee had concerns about Washington even as an undefeated team. Washington could still finish as a one-loss Pac-12 champ with a top 10 win against Oregon, but a loss to Washington State would be a giant stain on the Huskies' resume. I agree with that. Maybe not as big as a stain as like a Louisville, but still probably enough to knock Washington out of the playoffs. If Washington wins, the undefeated Huskies should be in the top 4 headed into the Pac-12 Conference Championship game, especially considering the loser of Ohio State and Michigan will likely drop out. Washington has control over their own destiny. They're ahead of Florida State, and the Buckeyes or the Wolverines are going to lose. And then there's some other games that are pretty, Kentucky and Louisville. We talked about that. Louisville, if they win, they could keep their slim playoff hopes alive, but they would still need to upset an undefeated Florida State in the ACC title game. Plus, they would need a whole lot of chaos. Arizona State, we talked about that. The Pac-12 playoff hopes could be turned upside down. Arizona will clinch the spot in the Pac-12 title game with the win in an Oregon State loss. In Georgia and Georgia Tech. Rivalry game this week. And if Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, holy smokes, they won't. But if it happened, an improving, rambling wreck of Georgia Tech, if they defeated the number 1 Georgia, and then if Georgia lost to Alabama, what if Georgia Tech defeats Georgia and then Georgia defeats Alabama? Is there an SEC team in the 4-team invitational? And that is a question. The top 25 is happening right now. Let me know. Let me know in your comments. I'm going to be keeping an eye on with my X account, Twitter account. Let me know where it all stands. We're going to be opening up the phone lines right now. Give me 1 second. Phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. Again, talking about the big rivalry games this week. I'm going to open up, see what's going on here. Real quick. So, number 20 was Oklahoma State. The playoff selection committee are ranking the schools right now. Oklahoma State is number 20. Kansas State is number 19. Notre Dame is 18. Iowa is 17. Oregon State is 16. Number 15 is Arizona. Number 14 is LSU. Number 13 is Oklahoma. Number 12 is Ole Miss. Number 11 is Penn State. Number 10, Louisville. Number 9, Missouri. Wow. Number 8, Alabama. Alabama still not inside Texas, which I agree with. 7, Texas. 6, Oregon. Let's see if there's an update. Number 25 is Liberty, 24 Clemson, 22 Tulane, 22 North Carolina State, 21 Tennessee. So Tulane still has the inside track for a New Year's Bowl game. I do not see the top 5 yet. Doesn't look like they've come out with the top 5. What do you think about those rankings? Ooh, Steven doesn't like Missouri at number 9. Missouri's got, I don't know, man. Brady Cook, Cody Schrader, the great wide receiver. They've got some players on that team. They have got some players on that team. I don't. 9 or 10. I can see Louisville being number 9. I can see Louisville being number 9. The phone lines are open if you want to give us a call. 763-260-1333. Stephen McNeely, Florida State and Clemson each pay $120 million to leave the ACC. That will give the remaining schools $20 million each. Would that be enough to keep any other teams from leaving? Well, first of all, if there's a settlement here, it's gonna cost Florida State and Clemson more than $120 million each. I mean, they owe that on the exit fee alone. They're going to be owing more to get out of the grant of rights, in my opinion, Stephen. In my opinion, it's going to be more than $120 million. I would be absolutely shocked if it was less than $300 million, less than $250. Let's see. Let me do a update here. Well, number 1 is Georgia. I know that. Number 2 is Ohio State. Number 3 is Michigan. There is no changes. Basically, there is no changes. Washington. Yeah, there really is no changes. Nothing really of importance. It looks like it's Michigan 3, Washington 4, Florida State 5. Same thing as last week. So it's coming down to those rivalry games. Florida State with a backup quarterback, Rodmacher. Can he get it done against Florida? I think he can. I think Florida State's going to rise to the occasion. They're going to rally around their backup quarterback. Florida State, I think, is going to win because set up a Florida State Louisville. Louisville probably going to beat Kentucky. Kentucky is slipping and sliding. Louisville is rising. So it's going to be a 12-0 Florida State versus an 11-1 Louisville in the ACC championship game. The winner of Michigan and Ohio State. Now, I did a poll yesterday on the live show. 52% of the PATC community picked Ohio State. 48% of the community took Michigan. I agree with you, Stephen. They have no path. But man, what a great season for the Missouri Tigers. Holy smokes. If this was the 12-team expanded playoffs, if this was the year for that, you'd be looking at Georgia, Alabama, Missouri as SEC teams in the playoffs. Would there be another one? Would LSU be able to get in there? I don't know. There'd be at least 3 of them. There'd be at least 3 of them. Let me check the headlines for the playoffs. Washington is number 4. Florida State is number 5, just like the AP. Here is your top 25. Putting it up on the screen right now. Liberty 25, Clemson 24, Tulane 23. So Tulane has got the edge on Liberty to get that New Year's Bowl again. You remember, Tulane beat USC in the New Year's Bowl last year. It looks like Tulane, the Green Wave, Willie Fritz, the quarterback, it looks like they're heading back there again, unless they get tripped up. Now, Tulane does play UTSA on Saturday. That's a big game. That's a huge game. And then they got the AAC championship game as well after that. North Carolina State, who's come back a little bit this year, late in the season, they're 22. Tennessee 20, Oklahoma State 20, Kansas State 19, Notre Dame 18, Iowa 17, Oregon State 16, Arizona 15, LSU 14, Oklahoma 13, Ole Miss 12, Penn State 11, Louisville 10, Missouri 9, Alabama 8, Texas 7, Oregon 6, Florida State 5, Washington 4, Michigan 3, Ohio State 2, Georgia 1. So if this was the expanded playoffs this year, Georgia would get the number 1 seed, Ohio State would get the number 2 seed, Washington would get the number 3 seed, Florida State would get the number 4 seed, Michigan would get the 5th seed, Oregon 6th seed, and all the way down the list, Louisville would make the playoffs, Penn State would make the playoffs, and then Tulane would be the 12th seed. You would have Tulane versus Michigan in the first round of the playoffs. If you were, Okay, let's get to your comments. Phone lines are open if you want to give us a call about anything college football. I swear Dan Lanning better not do what he did against Washington. Well, that was a great game, though. That was a great Oregon State. This is gonna be. Oh man. I mean, Oregon State, Washington. It was close, competitive. It was tight. The heart was just beating. Nick Kelso, Greg, do you have an update to the Holy Smokes Theater post Notre Dame TV? If not, do you think you'll be able to do next week? Yeah, I don't have it. Don't have it ready for tonight. I'll do it later this week, maybe even tomorrow. I think the whole Notre Dame TV deal was the result of like the symptoms of what we were getting the last 3 weeks. We were talking about how there's been an increase in chance of the SEC not only eating first or second, but eating third or fourth if they want to from the ACC table. We said that on November 6th. And that was a great indication that Notre Dame was not going to be breaking first away from the ACC, which would have helped the Big Ten cause, which would have given more options to Florida State and Clemson. SEC is in the catbird seat in the next wave of realignment. That's how we're reading it. I don't know how we can't read it any differently. That's what's been told to us. The Notre Dame TV deal falls right in line with that. So, but yeah, we'll go over it. Let me do some poking and prodding, Nick. Let me do some more poking and prodding on that. We'll see if we can get an update that has any value at all. New Mexico State Aggies. Yes, they've defeated Auburn. They're going to the conference championship game against Liberty. Jamie Chadwell versus Jerry Kill. Young man versus old man. I think that game is Friday. Not this Friday. Next Friday, like at 6 o'clock, I think. All I can say is go Buckeyes. You got that right. You got that right. Now, who am I going to pick between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines? Who do I think is going to win? I got to make my pick, but I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet because I know whoever I take, the fan base of that team is going to be very upset because Greg the Cooler is freezing cold. And I'm going to ice that team. I'm going to ice them out of winning the Big Ten championship. Whoever I pick is going to lose that game. So, I have no idea what I'm going to do yet. Michigan overall is the better team. On the other hand, J.J. McCarthy looks like he's slipping a little bit. Kyle McCord, is he gonna have a big game? In a big game, an important game. I think he's gonna do pretty good. You know, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's the unguardable one. They're gonna challenge Michigan. I don't know, man. I don't know. Roman Wilson, is he really okay? The top receiver for Michigan. Corum's going to get his yards. Donovan Edwards is going to make two good plays on third down. Lovelace is going to make a couple first down catches. Third down, that he's going to move the chains for Michigan. It's that J.J. McCarthy, Kyle McCord. J.J. is better. He's better. More experience. Got the wheels. But he's slipping. There's something going on there. There's something going on there, and I'm not sure. It might be a little bit. I think he might be a little nicked up. It's changing some things. Maybe he lost his confidence a little bit. Maybe he looks at the sidelines and Jim Harbaugh's not there. There's something going on there. That's the one thing that has me. I should take Michigan. Michigan's going to win, except I'm a little worried about J.J. McCarthy. Anthony Carlson says, it's all going to come down to the fourth quarter. Expedition Greg, yes, the Buckeyes got all the weapons. All the weapons. Buka, Stovar, tight end, the unguardable one, the thoroughbred, Henderson. Field Crew, Dirt, Dr. Cheese. Field Crew, Dirt, Dr. Cheese. Go Toledo. About to have a rocket in my household. Took a visit last week. Very personable school. Well, congratulations on having looks like you're going to have a rocket in your family. Congratulations, Field Crew, Dirt, Dr. Cheese. Toledo. Now, who are they playing in the MAC Conference Championship? I don't even know. I should know that. They're not quite in the top 25, as we can see. I don't even know who they're going to play. I should know that. It looks like the Miami Redhawks. It looks like the Miami Redhawks. They played at Ball State last week of the season. Yeah, Miami Redhawks. They've got a crafty little quarterback. Brett Gabbert. Okay. It'll be interesting to see if Ohio State loses to Michigan and then Michigan loses to Iowa. Then Alabama loses along with Washington, Texas, Florida State. Yeah, then you have complete chaos. No offense to Iowa, but Iowa's not going to be beating Michigan or Ohio State. Just not going to happen. Just is not going to happen. I think they just don't have the juice. And they lost their best player, Dijon Cooper. Not happening. In fact, I expect Nebraska to beat Iowa this Friday. For Nebraska to finally get back to a bowl game. I believe the Cornhuskers will beat the Hawkeyes. Stephen McNeely's cheering for all the underdogs. He wants complete chaos. I think a lot of people agree with you, Stephen. If you don't have a team in the game, a lot of people root for chaos. Okay, again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support the channel through a donation, a super chat. Hit the $sign with a comment and we'll get to your comment as soon as possible. If you want to become a member, an early peak membership gives you early peak videos of a little bit of nuggets of information that we disperse here on this YouTube channel. We give it to you first, early peak membership, plus a whole lot of other things that goes on with those videos. If you want to, there's a membership. Hit the join button. Go ahead and hit that join button. Become an early peak member. We just got one level of membership, giving you the best information as soon as possible. Early peak. For example, this morning we talked about the Ross Dellinger article early in the morning in our early peak episode. We also talked about, go check it out. Become a member, early peak membership. Hit the join button. Now, the Gophers. Yes, Minnesota, #1 APR rating. It looks like Minnesota might come through the back door, get into the lowest bowl game possible. If there's not enough teams that filling it out, let's just hope the Gophers beat Wisconsin for the third year in a row, keep the axe, and get in as a 6-6 team. I predicted Minnesota to finish 6-6 at the start of the year. I knew they were going to take a couple steps back this year. They don't have the thoroughbreds in the back seven. Plus, they had a bunch of injuries in the back seven. What I'm most nervous about is December 4th, the portal. There's a couple guys on our team. If they join the portal, if they get in the transfer portal, if let me put it this way. If Darius Taylor, a true freshman running back who won the Freshman of the Week award 3 weeks out of the 5 that he played this year because of injuries, sensational running back, 4-star running back out of the state of Michigan. The way he played this year, then the hamstring got to him. If he goes in the transfer portal, if he drops in there on December 4th, peek around the corner. My funeral will be the following Thursday after that young gentleman goes in the portal, if it happens. And I'm not the only one that's feeling it. There's a lot of fan bases out there. Teams that went 6-6, 4-8, 3-9, but they got a couple guys, a couple studs on their team. They don't want to lose them. They haven't been in the portal yet. They can go into the transfer portal. They haven't used up their one free shot.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, Mr. Bearcat, the floor is yours. How you doing, sir?
Good, Greg. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Getting ready for a big rivalry weekend in college football.
Yeah. When you were talking about Tulane, getting the New Year's Six, most likely getting the NY6 Bowl again, they've got UTSA Friday at 3:30. That should be a great game.
Yes, sir. Yep, that's going to be a great game.
You're going to see two really good quarterbacks.
Yep.
The loser of that game most likely won't play in the AAC championship game because SMU's undefeated in the AAC, and they play Navy, and if they don't stumble against Navy, so the loser of if Tulane loses to UTSA, and it is at Tulane,
yeah,
that gives them two losses on the season. Now, granted, their other loss was to Mississippi, which was a quality loss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you want to call it a quality loss.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting. That game's at 3:30. That's one Friday that I'm going to definitely tune into.
Yes, Tulane 7-0, SMU is 7-0, UTSA Roadrunners is 7-0. That game is on Friday. I thought that game was on Saturday.
No, 3:30 Friday.
Wow.
I think ABC also. I think it's on ABC.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So that will be one I'm going to keep my eye on Friday
most
afternoon
definitely.
for sure. It's just I lost my train of thought, Greg.
Well, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. The other thing is, no, I didn't go back and look, but last week wasn't Florida State number 4 and Washington number 5 in the playoff rankings?
Yes, and then
okay.
And the AP voters flipped it, and now the college football rankings flipped it.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. I didn't go back and look at that because I was looking at some other things, but I couldn't remember who was 4 and 5 last week. So Washington wins out. Greg, is it going to be Washington and Oregon probably in the PAC championship game?
If Oregon defeats Oregon State, it'll be Oregon and Washington. No matter if Washington loses to Washington State. Washington's in.
Okay.
If Oregon
Washington's
if Oregon defeats Oregon State, Oregon is in. If Oregon loses to Oregon State, and if Arizona defeats Arizona State, it will be Washington versus Arizona in the Pac-12 championship.
Okay, good. All right. I was a little confused on that too. Wish I would have had some money at the beginning of the season and put it on Arizona being in the PAC championship.
Yeah. Unbelievable job by Jed Fish.
Yeah, those would have been great odds, huh?
Yes.
All right. So Alabama plays Auburn. Georgia plays. I'm just looking at some of the rivalry games of interest, but that AAC game really just jumped out at me when you started talking about Tulane. I thought they played UTSA this weekend, but I wanted to double check. So, like I said, that'll be a fun game to watch with a couple really good quarterbacks. So,
Yep, Frank Harris.
Now Harris is healthy. I mean, they struggled a little bit when he was banged up earlier in the season, but now he's healthy. Looks like they're going to be really. It's just going to be a heck of a game. Florida, or I'm sorry, Greg. Florida State. I just think Florida State's too good 11 on 11, regardless of who the quarterback is. And I might be wrong on both sides of the ball.
I would agree with you.
Then, I mean, Louisville's hanging by a thread. So many things got to happen. But Louisville and Kentucky in that state, that's a huge game. That's just a huge game. And it'll be interesting to see how Louisville plays in that game.
Yes. Another, Louisville, Missouri, Arizona, man, these schools have done way better than any predictions out there. Incredible job. Just unbelievable job. Louisville, Jeff Brown, man. Wow. Unbelievable. Nobody outside of the Louisville fan base had Louisville in the ACC championship game.
No. And on another of the great rivalries in the Iron Bowl, if Alabama loses to Auburn, we got a story.
I don't think that's happening, but we would.
No.
Yeah.
I just don't see that going down. So it'll be interesting to see how everything stands on Sunday morning. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to touch on what you hit on earlier about conference revenue sharing and everything. That's just that's tough for a guy like me to fathom, and it's going to happen. And we'll see how it all plays out. But I sure hope the NCAA is not involved in any way, shape, or form, because they'll bumble it up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think they would.
Yeah.
But to see how it plays out is going to be quite interesting, Greg.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
All right, my man. That's all I have tonight. Thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate it. Thanks for calling, sir. Bearcat Steve.
Yep. Talk to you later.
Yep, you bet. Yeah, I'm glad Steve told me that UTSA Tulane game was Friday. I think there's been like 5 or 6 times during the year I've said UTSA plays Tulane November 25th, last game of the year, could mean everything in the AAC, and I've been saying the wrong date the whole time. So, yikes. It better not be Gophers versus New Mexico State in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Geez, I hope not. Now, Gophers played New Mexico State last year. It was Jerry Kill and PJ Fleck going at it, and the Gophers handled them pretty easily. But New Mexico State, I don't even know. I don't even want to go there with it. Don't even want to go there yet. I think New Mexico State would be New Mexico State's going to a better bowl than that. So, I think. Go Black 45. Harrison has 3 games with 30 yards receiving. He's not the best wide receiver in the country. Oh, I don't know about that. I think Marvin Harris is the number 1 receiver. I don't know. He's got an unsteady quarterback. I tell you that. If he had a couple of these other cats as his quarterback, Caleb Williams and Drake May, Marvin Harris's numbers would be unbelievable. He's unguardable. He's always open. Always open. Let's take a look real quick here. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Okay, now I lost it. I did not want to do that. Oh well, that's okay. No big deal. All right, let's get back to your comments, your phone calls. Again, Northwestern Stadium. After 6 hours of debate, Northwestern's $800 million stadium project has been approved by Evanston City Council. Holy smokes. Evanston City Council. Work is expected to begin immediately. Northwestern gets the okay from the City Council for new Ryan Field. Evanston, Illinois City Council favor and voted the project and approved a rezoning application to allow 6 concerts per year in addition to other events. 35,000 seat, down 12,000 seats. Feature a canopy designed to keep the noise and the light focused on the field. It would include cutting-edge technology and scoreboards, as well as concessions with food from local restaurants. Northwestern Wildcats, $800 million. That's a whole lot of money for a 35,000 seat stadium. But it fits the fan base, it fits the location. So very good news for the football program. They have a beautiful practice football facility right on the shores of Lake Michigan. Absolutely gorgeous. And now they're going to have a nice, beautiful 35,000 seat stadium. Well, anyways, we're going to close it up for tonight. I just wanted to go on a live show, do the college football, the new rankings Tuesday night. We were able to do that. We talked about the Ross Dellinger article, the looming reality, the great split. It's going to happen. The Power 5, the Autonomy Conferences are going to be governing themselves even more here in the next few years. Revenue sharing is right around the corner. Okay, I'll take another call.
Call from
Wild Ute.
Wild Ute is on the line. The floor is yours, sir.
What is up? How you doing, Greg?
Good. I'm doing good. Are you guys going on live tonight?
Yeah, we're going on live about 45 minutes here, and listening on Peek Around the Corner, and it piqued my interest to one of these topics here that you brought up that I wanted to have a conversation with you on real quick.
Got it.
Okay, so this pay-for-play conversation, it's a bit concerning for me as a Ute fan, as a Big 12 guy, especially if schools or perhaps conferences are going to be paying players directly.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. I think that the next shoe to drop once that happens is having a conversation around a salary cap. It seems to me like, based on how you were broaching the conversation, that you were thinking there wouldn't be a salary cap for a team. For example, in recruiting, Ohio State would have, unlimited pockets really with however they wanted to fund their recruiting, and they would come up with 2 or 3 year contracts for players, for recruits, and assign them for as much money as they could afford. Versus a school like Utah, with lower media payouts coming to them in the Big 12 conference, having a lot lower budget, even if boosters would improve that a little bit. I think that for competitive balance, that a salary cap really needs to be considered in this conversation too. And when you brought up the fact that we're going to a baseball format, where baseball has an unlimited salary cap versus an NFL with a real salary cap or an NBA with a real salary cap. The big difference, Greg, there is the farm system in baseball, where you can have a Royals team that has a farm system, and you can bring up some good players and make a run at a World Series. So a Royals can win the World Series occasionally. But if in recruiting, there's no farm system at all. So you're just strictly looking at just like, a bidding war on 4 or 5 star blue chip recruits. And I mean, no one's an idiot. Everyone's going to chase the money in most cases and stuff. If there's decent playing time. So it just seems this is going to get super polar. It's already polar, and that's just really going to push it to the next level. So, the Power 2, you want to call it the Big Ten and the SEC, are going to have even more advantages. And this is a significant advantage, too, financially. And we're talking about a salary cap end.
Now, could there be a salary cap? I mean, I suppose. I mean, if a conference agrees to it, I don't see it happening. I mean, I don't see it happening because again, the schools and the conferences want to protect themselves from lawsuits down the road when it comes to student athletes. This whole revenue sharing, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. This has been the straw that has been stirring the drink since the first episode I did on this YouTube channel. This is why Texas and Oklahoma called the SEC. They did not call the SEC because it was going to be easier to win an SEC championship than winning a Big 12 championship. You know what I'm saying? They were going to go where the greatest money and opportunity were because of this revenue sharing. That's why USC finally called the Big Ten and said, we want in. It's why all these things are happening. This is the number one reason why. Because they want to get above the stratification line. I talked about this all during 2022 on my Twitter account at the time. This was the engine that everybody anticipates this to happen. Now, could there be a salary cap down the line? I suppose. It's going to be a give and a take. Whoever's representing the student athletes, they're going to be going into some sort of collective bargaining agreement with the conferences, schools, the conferences representing the schools. I don't see Ohio State wanting to give that up, that advantage. These big schools are going to be calling a lot of shots, and I don't think they're going to be giving that up. We already have a big disadvantage with NIL, right?
Right.
We already have it. So what this will do, the one advantage that this will do is there's going to have to be some obligations given back to the schools. The student athletes are going to have to sign a contract, an employment contract. And it could be a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. It depends on, when they're recruiting, what the rules are. But these schools are going to be able to manage the roster, at least with some sort of, reliability. Because today they're just bouncing around. They're losing guys. When December 4th hits, Wild Youth,
it's going to be a feeding frenzy.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And these coaches, you can't run competition like this. So
I do understand that, just thinking about the health of the sport, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to a 12-team playoff. We might expand in the future to a 16-team playoff.
Yeah.
We're just going to more and more imbalance, and especially every league in the world has a farm system if they don't have a salary cap.
Well,
and we're eliminating that, and it just seems it sucks because as a Ute fan, we're screwed. Let's be honest about that. In this new world, if we can't pay as much, we can't give a recruit a 4 or 5 star recruit a $5 million deal like Ohio State and Michigan could. It really creates a huge gap. And I guess maybe it's just an above board gap now. Or
it's an above board gap now. I mean,
So,
look,
yeah.
as a Gopher, we've been screwed for 50 years. We have no chance. We have no chance. We're the most northern university. We're a hockey school. We've got no chance at competing in football. We're going to get blown out by these big. Now, once in a while, we pull the upset. But you know what I'm saying. There's no way.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, it's already happening. Now, with this revenue sharing, you know what? Like an example, Iowa, the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I know there's Iowa State fans in the chat. The Iowa Hawkeyes have had the advantage over Iowa State, right? They're a bigger school. They're in the Big Ten, whatever. They've had the advantage over Iowa State. In this revenue sharing world, their advantage is going to grow over Iowa State, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the part that people are going to finally realize. But see, that is the reason that was the reason why Texas and Oklahoma called the SEC. It's because of this issue. This isn't something that people just thought of and said, "Oh, this might happen." This was like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Schools finally said, "Geez, this is going to happen," and we got to get to on top of the stratification line if we can get there. The reason why Oregon and Washington when they saw that deal, they're not making, 30-some million, but they know they're going to be above the stratification line 5 years from now. Right? 6 years.
Yeah, and the stratification line, is that just the average payoff from a SEC and Big Ten
Yeah,
school?
yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the stratification line is just roughly $75 to $80 million a year versus everybody else.
Yeah. And how much will these conferences get involved? Like, will they use some of will there be conference-wise, are the conference going to shell out a slice of what they have in their coffers to the student athletes within the conference? I think they will, because I think it's a conference. It's going to be a combination of conference and school, because then that protects the conference. Like, if you're giving the student athletes some money, direct money, then the student athletes have obligations to the conference and the school. This is an advantage that the conferences are going to have versus like a Notre Dame. That's another reason why I still think the walls are closing in on Notre Dame eventually when this starts to happen, because there's going to be advantages to being part of a big, powerful conference. The advantages that Utah has over, let's say,
Minnesota,
a Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, whatever the advantage they have over Wyoming right now, that advantage grows, right, in this new world.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult because of, like, look at Minnesota versus Utah.
Yeah.
Right? Utah right now, like, with the success and everything, they built the program up to be like a semi-national contender and everything. But in this new world, Minnesota is going to have so many more advantages that we can't even compete with the Minnesota, given the new financial realities that we're talking about. And that's just so basically it makes Utah a AAA team instead of a Major League Baseball team.
And this is why I try to explain why schools like Minnesota, Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, this is the reasons why they pushed for Big Ten expansion. They wanted the conference to be as valuable as possible so they could benefit from it. This is why they gave their votes. When the Big Ten expanded with Oregon and Washington, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan were against it. But there were more votes for it, and they finally Fox Sports put up the money to get them in the door. This is why these schools have been pushing for the most valuable conferences possible, because they were going to benefit from it. That's why they said yes to USC, UCLA, right? Because it pushed all their pay up. And it's why Utah is going to keep swinging for the fences in the future to try to possibly get into the Big Ten. That's just it. This has been going on for years. People are trying finally, and who knows, maybe 10 years from now, the Big Ten fractures. In the bigger schools, they do something else. We shall see. But right now, this is where it's all going. The revenue sharing piece has been the straw that has been stirring the drink for years. And it's finally, people are not whispering about it anymore. They're talking out loud about it.
Makes sense. I love it. It's a great conversation.
I mean, why would
for some of us?
Why would USC call the Big Ten?
Oh yeah, I mean it makes sense. It's a no-brainer for any school to try to get in and everything. But like, you just look at it and it creates so many different questions about equality and stuff, and what the sport looks like in the future, and really, if we're moving this direction, like we've talked about, look way down the road and stuff, like why not form your own super conference with Bama and Michigan and the like, just to get the most money and just do this to the next level? That's where we're going in 20 years, it seems like.
It could be.
Where you're leaving a Minnesota out, too.
It could be. These conferences could be fracturing in the future. No question about it. And I definitely have not ruled that out. It could happen. Now, one of the things is there's quite a bit of difference between Ohio State and Alabama. There's quite a bit of difference between Big Ten and SEC in how they view things, how they view other sports. There is there's big differences. So I don't know if those teams could coexist in a conference, but we shall see. It may happen. It may happen. Yeah.
Well, thanks for the time, Greg.
Yep. You got it. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, Wild. You. Great call. I mean, you think about it. Why did USC call the Big Ten? Go to my episode 22. Long time ago. We did an episode 22. Go watch it. I put up all the tweets that I put up during that spring when we broke the news that USC called the Big Ten. And then finally it was announced June 30th. I used the term stratification line throughout that whole spring and summer. USC did not go to the Big Ten because it's better for travel. It's not. It's not better for the student athletes. It's not. It's not easier to win the Big Ten championship in a huge conference than it would if you stayed in the Pac-12. It's not. It's not better for your Olympic sports. It's not. The only reason why USC called the Big Ten is because revenue sharing is coming. Why did Texas and Oklahoma call the SEC? Why did they join the SEC? Why do they want to have more 7-5, 6-6 records in the SEC? Baseball. Why did they do that? It's because revenue sharing is coming. And these schools and these conferences are going to agree to it to protect themselves from future lawsuits. To protect themselves. They finally get out from under this. And plus they manage their sport a little bit better when it comes to the crazy transfer portal and everything else. Well, anyways, now we're going to close up the live show. I want to thank for everybody coming on in. I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Get yourself notified of the next time we come up live with a live show or with one of our episodes. We have episodes, college football peek around the episode. We also have early peek. This is from membership, giving you the early peek throughout the day. Things we're going to be talking about later in the day, or we're going to give you the first peek at information that drops to us. This is where you're going to get it. Membership, $5.99 a month. Hit the join button. So give that a look. If you want to join, hit the join button, early peak membership. Please, before you leave, smash the like button if you like our content. If you didn't like our content, hit the thumbs down button and let me know in the comments section how we can make this show better, how we can provide you the content that you enjoy. But stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. It's Tuesday night. We're headed into rivalry week. A lot of breaking news going to be happening throughout this week, I believe. So stick with us. Peek Around the Corner. Until next time. From all of us at PATC, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other.